Look, the way that functional mushrooms have been marketed in today's age is a complete mess. So what you're told, and you've probably seen the graphics, it's lion's mane for focus in the morning, or cordyceps pre-workout for energy, or reishi at night to help you sleep. Or maybe it's turkey tail when you're feeling sick, or when you're trying to improve your immune system. And the hidden message behind that way of thinking is that you can only take one kind of mushroom at a time, and that the mushroom that you're taking, say it's lion's mane for focus, is going to have an instant effect. And then say if you took cordyceps for energy and reishi together, that they would have some kind of cancelling effect and there'd be no point taking them. And what we're going to do today is have a look at the research and where this marketing actually came from, and really see why we even believe these functional mushrooms are beneficial. How long were the studies done? What were the controls and the variables, and what kind of people were in the studies? What benefits did they see? And how long did it take to realize those benefits? One of the most common objections to taking a multi-blend mushroom supplement like this is that the mushrooms are going to cancel each other out. So the cordyceps is going to have an energizing effect, and the reishi is going to have a calming effect, and you're not going to feel the benefit of either mushroom because they've cancelled each other out. So on the surface, that sounds logical, but the reality is that in the research, the biology doesn't care about what the marketing has to say. The research that has been done that show that, for example, cordyceps improves ATP and energy is actually done over 16 weeks, and the benefits are seen slowly improving in the tests. We're not seeing an instant effect on the day that you take them. So the reality is that cordyceps has been shown to improve VO2 max scores, energy production, mitochondrial health, and reishi has been shown to improve recovery, improve fatigue, and we are seeing these benefits in the research. What we're not seeing is that these mushrooms, when taken together, have no positive effect, and that the benefits of these mushrooms are instant and they happen on the day that you take them for the first time. So what we actually are seeing is these studies are 12 to 16 weeks long, and that both mushrooms like reishi and cordyceps are going to work on similar pathways and improve the way that the body is functioning by providing the body what it needs. It's not necessarily like a stimulant drug or a calming drug. These are foods, and they're going to help to support your body's natural pathways. And really what we see when we do combine these mushrooms is that both of these pathways in the body are being improved, and they're not cancelling each other out, but rather they're actually supporting both systems. So really, if any of these benefits can be cancelled out by things like high stress, high amounts of fatigue, or poor sleep, you're going to notice that the benefits of these mushrooms aren't as obvious, purely because the body needs a holistic support. And what we're trying to do here is provide you with all of the things that help you over a long period of time. If you are looking for energy for a pre-workout and you need it on demand, you are better off taking coffee than cordyceps. But if you want a long-term approach that's sustainable, it's not going to increase your cortisol. It's actually going to reduce your cortisol, and you're going to see a long-term health benefit. That's where mushrooms actually come in. So let's look at each of these mushrooms individually and what the research actually says about each ingredient. Starting off with reishi, what human trials and evidence actually suggests is an improvement in immune function, improvements in fatigue and quality of life. There was a human trial with people who had cancer. They showed improvements in their quality of life, in their fatigue, and in their immune responses when used alongside standard cancer treatment as well. So we've also seen positive changes in mood, happiness, and life satisfaction in a small clinical trial of women who were suffering from fibromyalgia. Reishi also has a long clinical history of use in Asia. It's been used for thousands of years as an adjunct to standard Eastern treatments in medicine. If you're looking for somewhere to fit reishi into your stack, the benefits that you can summarize from this are immune response, stress resilience, and fatigue. So next up, we have cordyceps. Now, cordyceps, there's kind of two species. There's Cordyceps sinensis and Cordyceps militaris. So what we've seen is several human trials show that, for example, Cordyceps sinensis, we did see in a clinical trial The VO2 max of the participants improved over 12 weeks when compared to a control that did the same exercise, same input, but did not take Cordyceps sinensis. So that was a Cordyceps extract, and it did run over 12 weeks. There's another study that did show that a Cordyceps containing mushroom blend, like this one, also showed exhaustion rate of participants to slow down over multiple weeks. So what that means is they were able to do higher intensity exercise for a longer period of time without feeling exhausted. And there is a recent beverage trial with Cordyceps militaris that showed immune-related changes in adults as well over multiple weeks of use. So what all this is to say is that Cordyceps does not behave like a traditional stimulant. And often that is the way that it is marketed. This isn't like stimulating your central nervous system, increasing your cortisol and making you feel wired and energetic. Whereas caffeine would be like slamming your foot on the accelerator in an engine. This is more like tuning up an engine, looking after it, and improving the mechanisms over time. Okay, so we're going to talk about lion's mane now, and lion's mane is an amazing mushroom. It's known as the brain health mushroom, and that is for good reason. So we do have a placebo double-blind control study that shows in healthy adults that are slightly cognitively impaired over 16 weeks that their cognitive scores actually improved. So what this means is you're not going to take lion's mane on the same day that you have a test and instantly score better on that test. That's not the way it works. I took lion's mane, I'm a genius. It's more, I'm taking lion's mane over 16 weeks and the benefits are going to accumulate over time. What we did see is that the participants in this study, when they stopped taking the lion's mane after 16 weeks, the improvements that they showed actually reversed. So it's really good data. And it does kind of hit home the fact that taking these mushrooms on the day is not going to give you a noticeable effect, but over a long period of time, we are going to see real changes in your cognitive performance. So let's talk about Maitake. So Maitake is a heavy hitter on the immune side. So we do have a phase 1 and phase 2 trial in humans that did show a stimulatory and regulatory effect on the immune system that was measurable. There was another study as well where in older adults there was an enhanced antibody production in response to an influenza vaccine after taking Maitake. So what this means really is that Maitake has a very obvious benefit. The polysaccharides in Maitake do have a obvious and measurable benefit on the immune system. And that's what we do tend to see in these studies. Again, these studies were over 12 to 16 weeks. And the effect was long-term. So what this all means, it suggests that there's a host defense response there, and that we are seeing over a long period of time that there is an improvement in the immune response after taking Maitake. So let's talk about Shiitake now. So Shiitake mushrooms have shown a similar to Maitake, the immune response, but in Southeast Asia, we have seen a trial where as an adjunct to anti-cancer treatment, Shiitake actually did show to have anti-tumor properties. It also had the similar immune modulating effects as Maitake, and these benefits are mainly coming from the beta-glucan lentinin. So reviews of the research highlights Shiitake's role in the metabolic pathways, immune response, and inflammation response in the body. Again, a strong immune and systemic support in the stack. So now we're going to talk about turkey tail. It's one of the most studied mushrooms in an oncology context. Phase 1 clinical work has shown improvements in the immune response to women who are suffering from breast cancer. Turkey tail's protein-bound polysaccharides are known immune modulators. And in modern medicine in some countries, we are seeing turkey tail protein-bound polysaccharides being used as adjuncts in some contexts. So for a wellness audience, we want to be thinking the improvement of the immune system and improving resilience to disease over a long period of time. Definitely not take after you get sick. Next up, we're going to talk about Phellinus lentius. So this one flies under the radar a little bit. You've probably never heard of it, but it is legit. So it has been studied as well to show an immune modulating response over 8 weeks in a clinical trial, and that it was very well tolerated as well. So sitting again squarely in the immune support sector for the stack. And the final mushroom is Agaricus blazei. Again, it's an obvious immune and resilience mushroom. So there is a trial that did show that it had an immune modulating response, and it sits very squarely in that immune sector as well. So now for the key question. If I take all these mushrooms together, are they going to compound? Are they going to compare? What is the effect of taking them all together? Do they clash or do they work together? So a study on this specific formulation mushroom blend, Shiitake, Reishi, and Maitake, found a synergistic immune modulating effect and activity in human macrophages, meaning that this combo produced a stronger cytokine response than just an additive taking of these individual mushrooms. So taking them together and all at the same time actually had an increased effect than what we would expect to see if we just added up the measurable changes of each individual ingredient. And industry and academic reviews describe it as exactly that. It's a synergistic immune effect. So what we don't have is this seems like it would work together, and if this mushroom is good for immune systems and this mushroom is good for immune systems, maybe we should put them together. What we actually have is science that tells us that combining these mushrooms actually compounds the effects. So it's real data, and it's all been considered in why this mushroom blend even exists. So what we don't have is just this seems like it would work together and so would this. We have specific data that shows that these mushrooms work together, and we have actual science in relation to this mushroom blend. So mushroom blends in the real world, what we're seeing is that these studies are showing that different beta-glucan structures are actually having compounding and synergistic effects. And it's coming from the variance of beta-glucan structures from the multi-species mushroom blends. So the interest is definitely shifting, and we are seeing more industry and clinical interest in multi-species mushroom blends. The key point to take away is that what none of this data shows is that one mushroom cancels out another mushroom, and it's actually the opposite. So when these mushrooms are taken together on a regular basis, the positive effects are actually compounded, and these mushrooms are working together to support your body. Specifically, we are seeing the complementary effect of these mushrooms most clearly shown in the immune response research. So what we're not seeing is any evidence of antagonism. So these mushrooms, there is no data that shows that lion's mane is going to cancel out reishi or cordyceps is going to cancel out reishi. You would expect if cordyceps was going to cancel out reishi or lion's mane was going to block turkey tail, we would have some data that we could go through where we found that lion's mane by itself had a greater impact than lion's mane with reishi, for example. We would have a clinical trial where the result was worse when they were combined. The other thing we might expect to see if there was any negative to taking all these mushrooms together is that maybe the mushrooms are less tolerated by humans when they are combined. But what we have found in our deep dive is that there is no research that suggests any of this, and there's only positives that come from specific combinations of functional mushrooms. So what we do see is that there are long clinical studies that show these mushrooms are used as an adjunct in East Asian oncology settings, and that these mushrooms are often used alongside each other as an adjunct as well. And in vitro or early human research, what we are finding is there is that synergistic effect with the immune modulating mushrooms as well. So all this to say that the cancel each other out narrative or the take one in the morning and one at night marketing is completely false, and none of that is actually based on science. Okay, so now we're going to hit why we included ashwagandha. Where does ashwagandha fit into this stack of functional mushrooms? So as you've seen, the benefits of functional mushrooms are synergistic, and the reason for including ashwagandha is that ashwagandha has been shown in multiple studies to reduce anxiety, reduce levels of cortisol, and improve sleep. There's also been some studies that show that it improves testosterone in males. But what this is all leading to is that ashwagandha is supported as its classification. So it's classed as an adaptogenic compound, which means that it helps the body deal with stress. That's what an adaptogen does. A lot of these mushrooms are now being thought of as adaptogens as well, but ashwagandha is a very clear version of an adaptogen. So what we find is all of the benefits that we've discussed with these functional mushrooms, things like better recovery, fatigue, increased output, VO2 max, reduced time to exhaustion, all of these benefits tie in and are dependent on how stressed the body is and how inflamed it is. So optimal health really comes from reducing inflammation in the body. And what we're seeing is that these adaptogens do there's a suggested benefit to the inflammation and cortisol responses in the body. Now, obviously, cortisol is inflammatory. So when we do have high levels of cortisol, we have high inflammation, we have a stimulated nervous system, we have poorer cognitive thinking, reduced ability to handle stress, and that is why you'll see people having outbursts, right? Their stress goes too high, too much cortisol, their prefrontal cortex shuts down and the amygdala takes over. They're now in fight or flight response. Their immune system is overstimulated. Their nervous system is overstimulated, leading to inflammation, poor immunity, poor sleep, poor thinking, poor cognition, and poor output in physical performance. The reason we included ashwagandha is there is a correlation between the intake of ashwagandha and lower cortisol and inflammation in the body. Obviously, combining all of these together, as we showed before, that there is a synergistic effect especially with the immune response and the inflammation response of Reishi, Shiitake, Maitake, and the other ones that were mentioned. Okay, so let's come back to the take X mushroom for Y situation. So we're here now to expose the mushroom industry. So the marketing has been around for 10 years now, and it's really deep rooted in people's minds that if they take lion's mane in the morning, they're going to have improved cognitive response and cognitive support for the rest of the day. The way they communicate that is often with things like, we've heard everything really. ADHD, it helps with ADHD, it helps with focus. I take lion's mane and instantly feel ready to study. I get into the flow state. You've probably heard it all. And what we don't have is any research to support that if you take a mushroom, within 60 minutes, you are going to see the effects straight away. There are no clinical trials that show that. It's the same with Cordyceps. There is no high quality data that says if you take Cordyceps now, in 60 minutes, you are going to have an improved performance in the gym. All of the research that indicated the benefits that I was discussing before with each ingredient is going to show a benefit over a long period of time. All of those clinical studies were 8 to 16 weeks long. So it is actually lying when companies come out here and say, definitely make sure to take your lion's mane in the morning or your cordyceps before a gym and they feel so amazing. It's simply not true. A lot of those tinctures are suspended in alcohol, and microdosing alcohol can make you feel energetic. It can also make you feel sleepy, especially if that is what you have been told that the effect is going to be. So there is an element of placebo there, unfortunately. But what is clear is that if you take these mushrooms consistently and you take them for a long period of time, that one, the benefits are real and measurable, and two, that they reverse when the use is discontinued. What we also see is that these mushrooms are working together, and the different beta-glucan structures are going to have different benefits. None of these benefits are going to clash with each other, and they're all supporting different systems and pathways in your body that produce the same desired result. That result is reduced stress, reduced inflammation, improved cognitive function, and improved physical output. They are the main reasons that we are taking these mushrooms. But there is no science that says that splitting them all into 8 different bottles and taking them at different times in the day has any merit. There is no science that supports that. So there is no reason not to combine them all into one simple synergistic formula and take them at one time during the day over a long period of time and get all the benefits. So all this to say that the idea that you take this mushroom at this time for this benefit does not line up with how the mushrooms were studied, and there is no science to support that. All right, thanks for watching, guys. So we just did a deep dive there. We've exposed the mushroom industry. Don't be deceived anymore. If you do have any other questions or comments, please leave it below. Maybe about the exact dosages or about ashwagandha or anything like that, and we'll get back to you. We'll make another video.